Thanks, Grant. Hey, full disclosure, as Grant read those verses, as I read them this morning and thinking about this message, I recognize that they are some of the most misunderstood and maybe in our time and day, most quoted verses of Jesus from the Bible. Many people will be heard to say, "Do not judge." And in saying that, I think they often misunderstand what Jesus intended when he told his disciples on the mountain, the Sermon on the Mount, do not judge. Let's think about that together. And I want to, at least in part, correct some of the misunderstandings that I think happen with this verse that is very common, but maybe very misunderstood. First of all, in our world today, in our culture, I feel like many times people say, "Do not judge," and they mean by that, don't form any conclusions about the value, the goodness or badness of an action. Let that be an individual thing. A person can make that choice for themselves. It can be good for someone, maybe bad for someone else. And so they hear Jesus' words, "Do not judge." And in their thinking, they are saying, well, that means everything is probably okay for the person who thinks it's okay. That would not be the case. Jesus himself would say to people in his ministry, "You decide. Don't you know these people are like whitewashed graves? They're full of dead man's bones." Jesus would refer to some as hypocrites, and Jesus formed conclusions about people's actions, and we might call them judgments. Jesus would say, "No, I'm telling you the way things really are." Throughout the Bible, we are told that we need to make decisions about right and wrong. For example, in Luke chapter 12, Jesus himself said, "Judge for yourselves what is right." Make some judgments. You cannot just say, well, it's right for you or wrong for someone else. Jesus said we need to form moral values that are basis for our actions and our decisions. And that is not just from Jesus' words. There's right judgment about doctrine described in the Bible. We need to decide what's right and wrong from various teachers about what they say. There are times when we are called as believers, as God's people, to make judgments, decisions about people. Church leaders are to be examined before they're put into leadership. Christians are called to be discerning, to make judgments between disagreements between Christians. In fact, Paul would say in 1 Corinthians, don't go to the court, go to the church and let them help you decide between what's right and wrong. God would tell us in 1 Corinthians chapter 5 that we should recognize when people's actions in the church are wrong, and if they are unwilling to change, then we need to ask them to leave the fellowship of the church because their actions are degrading and they are disrespectful to the teaching of Jesus. There are many times in Scripture when we are told, when we are commanded to make judgments. It is not wrong to judge. There are times when judgments are important. So what did Jesus mean when he said these words that Grant read for us in Matthew chapter 7? And as we think about that, I want to have us consider this as a very important principle for now. Maybe that's why I was drawn to it. Our restrictions are opening up. We are meeting more people out in regular activities in public. Things are opening up and people are nervous and often afraid. And I wonder if there isn't more and more judging going on. You walk into Hornbacher's or some other local grocery store and you see someone there not wearing a mask and you think to yourself, what's wrong with them? They shouldn't even be out. And you find being critical and angry, maybe fearful. I think we should not be that way. That is what Jesus is referring to. Jesus says, do not have that kind of critical attitude, that kind of judgmentalness about people and situations where you really don't know what's going on and you really don't understand where another person might be coming from. You might not know that someone has asthma or has some other condition where wearing a mask would be even more detrimental to their health. My friends, my neighbors, Jesus' words, do not judge, are very important for us right now. And I want us to think carefully about them. And I want to make some suggestions about how we can apply them. But let's take a moment and have a parable. It's a video parable, and it doesn't have audio. There's no sound to it. You're going to have to read and look at the pictures to get the message. But it's a good message. It's a message that I think Jesus would say, hey, this puts it in a good way. I hope that you'll pay attention to this modern parable that takes the words of Jesus and brings them home in a very good way.